So today I want to talk about data co-ops, data cooperatives. So we are in an interesting time today that is very similar to the mid-1800s when society from an agricultural base was moving to becoming an industrial age. And that was the time when you had the big giants. J.P. Morgan goes all the way back, Standard Oil, right? All the railroad barons, all the big family names that still exist today. And so we have a similar situation today with regards to data, right? Citizens, individuals really don't have access to their own copies of my data. So, everybody's got a mobile phone. It's difficult to get my telco to give me copies of my CDR records, right? There's a lot of hassle to do that. So hope this works. So we have a very complex personal data ecosystem today, right? So I'd have to let you guys know about this. You've been hearing this for the last day today. One of the ideas that we are working on at MIT is this idea of a data co-op. So how do you empower individuals to actually make use of their personal data? Two of the reports that are, and I'll give you a pointer to a full paper at the end of the slide. Two of the most important reports, I think, that came out in the last 10 years are shown there. The personal data, 2011 is the personal data as the new asset class. That was the first time, I think, formally the forum, World Economic Forum, understood personal data as oil, right? That it is an asset, call it an asset, right? Certainly the people in the banking sector, people in the corporate sector understand it as asset. So we should do that as well. The second report was a 2014 report that I will focus on today, which is how to address some of the issues, rethinking personal data. I will encourage you to read those two reports. Just Google it. It's on the forum's website. It's downloaded. Easy read. The blue one is a bit depressing because it just says everything's wrong. The white one, rethinking, is kind of a bit more positive because, we can do certain things. So one of the threads of discussion going through the 2014 forum report is the decline of trust in institutions and organizations on the part of individuals, right? So that's, okay, no news there. And so this is actually cut-and-paste from the diagram in the report. How do we fix that, right? Current approach, new perspective. How do we do that? How do we address this dilemma? So ways to increase trust, right? So this is, again, from the report. Interestingly, so this is 2011, 2014, 2018 in December, the World is the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. The mobile guys produced an interesting report in December saying basically that the trust level that an individual has in a service provider has a direct correlation with the willingness or not of the individual to install mobile apps. Okay, so let me repeat that again. This hits the bottom lines for the carrier. And this is why it's important for the telco carriers. If an individual distrusts a given brand of a service provider, that individual will be less likely to install a mobile app or remove a mobile app. And you guys, we all know that experience. Tried an app, it doesn't work. Or I hear bad news about some service provider abusing data, I just remove the app, right? So the 2014 forum report said, how do we increase transparency? How do we strengthen trust? So three things. First thing, increase in transparency. So individuals need to know what's happening with their data. So this is the what, who, when, what are you doing with my data, etc. Fine. The second thing is improving accountability. So is there a way for organizations, institutions that hold personal data to continuously give insight, accountability to what the data is being used for, right? So these are very difficult to do today, at least in the United States. The third one, which is what I'm going to focus on today, is how to empower individuals. So the report says give them a say about how and what the data is being used for. This is sort of veering into consent. More interestingly is provide the capacity for individuals to use their data for their own purposes, right? Now, it doesn't mean, my mom who's 70-something is going to download data. The average citizen doesn't know how to do that. So we think, in fact, there's opportunity for new infrastructures, new services, new startups to actually address some of these issues. So I'm just going to flip through that. There's a bottom right hand corner there. I'll just run through this quickly. I encourage you to read the report. Again, the forum reports are very nice, nicely written. This is a particularly nicely written report. So what are data cooperatives? So here is the use case. So an Uber driver, we live in Boston, an Uber driver in Boston has no way to compare the mileage and income with an Uber driver in, say, South Boston. Right, so you're both driving, let's say, identical car, Toyota Camry, big brand, driving kind of the same situation. How does one person know he's getting equivalent pay with the second person? Let me up it up one level. The gig economy, right? So you have this idea of, well, you know, hotel, particularly the service industry, hotel workers are going to be gig economized, and so on and so on. How do people know they're getting, you know, equal sort of remuneration, to put it bluntly? So what if the Uber drivers in Boston could get together in a cooperative, remember cooperative, like a credit union, together where they say to Uber, we want copies of all my data. So a data store containing one person's data is not valuable. You could do stuff fine. But what if you have, you know, a membership of 5,000 members, 10,000 members, 60,000 members? Then you can do interesting analytics, right? So it's member-owned. It's optional. It's, you know, you can start it up, and it's good that Tom Spedinghoff talked about, you know, the 3 levels of contract. I encourage you. OIX has got a report with his name up there from 2 years ago that explains the 3 layers. It's very, very well written. I encourage you to read that. That could be a foundation for the data cooperative in the United States. Again, this depends on the country. So fiduciary is a big word. Okay, so I was like, okay, explain slowly what fiduciary. I'm not a lawyer, so I had to look it up. So, guys know who Jack Balkin is? Yes, no. Lawyers in the room. Do you know? You do know who the guy is? Okay, so he is one of probably the first person to compare. How can individuals use First Amendment, Second Amendment, you know, to gain access to copies of data? Let's put it that way. And his conclusion was that you're going to lose in court. Better to use a thing called a fiduciary. I encourage you to look up his name, Jack Balkin, Yale Law Review from about 10 years ago. It's a 51-page article. It's well worth reading slowly. Okay, so I'm using his definition there. It's a person of business with an obligation to act in a trustworthy manner in the interest of another person or entity. Okay. So the key thing about the idea of a data co-op is that it's not there to monetize a person's data, members' data. The idea is you have to do algorithmic, you know, running algorithms, computing insights that benefit the members. So, for example, in the Uber case, 60,000 Uber members could say, well, look, you know what? Based on our you know, analysis, you know, most of us are sitting in traffic, you know, 40% of the time. Hey, could we approach the Massachusetts state and say, okay, like, do something about this, give us a tax break or something like that, right? Or another use case would be healthcare, right? So, so we're talking to a number of credit unions. We're also talking to Uniglobal. For those who don't know, Uniglobal in Switzerland is the umbrella organization of the trade unions of the world, right? So this is perfect. So take a trade union somewhere in the United States or in Europe, you know, builders trade union. Great. So you do analytics on 60,000 members, and you find out that, oh, most of the guys have young families, and the average member has like 1.5 children under 10. So can the co-op negotiate with service providers? Can it go to Amazon and say, okay, we want 30% discount on diapers? Like, just a bit of example. Or go to a healthcare provider and say, hey, we want to collectively bargain to get better services. So the idea is that by pooling together resources, this data co-op is in a good position to negotiate for better services, better discounts, and so on. finally, it's consent-driven. So again, it's optional. And we are strong believers in data privacy. The MIT Open Algorithms is our solution to the privacy problem. Basically, it looks like this. Has three principles, maybe four. First principle is you send the algorithm to the data. So today, the big data analytics organizations, what they have large, huge Hadoop infrastructures. For those who know Hadoop and Spark, they ingest terabytes of data and do analytics. That's great, assuming you have access to the data, right? But today we don't. Most people, individuals don't. So in the first principle, send the algorithm to the data. Secondly, data must never leave the repository, right? So if you look at the January issue of one of the issues of Time magazine, you'll see Tim Cook from Apple talk about privacy. How do you empower consumers, right? And how do you avoid this shadow economy that's going on right now? It's very easy. Stop extracting data out of repositories and then selling it to the back door. Just stop doing it. And there might be, I don't know, where's Tom? There might be a federal level privacy regulation in the future in the United States that will prohibit that. Certainly the CCPA in California, I believe personally, is not strong enough. We can talk about that offline. It's certainly not as nice as the GDPR. So move the algorithm to the data, never release data. Thirdly, only run vetted algorithms. So there's a whole problem about fairness in algorithms and in data sets, right? So if you're into machine learning and AI, there's entire conferences dedicated to fairness in machine learning. If you have an algorithm, how do you know it's not going to discriminate unintentionally? This is all side effects, right? This is, how do you know you're not going to have this district redlining effect because they happen to run your algorithm on a data set that included certain things from your past, for example, right? And fourthly, optional, keep data encrypted always during computation and in storage. So we're into now homomorphic encryption territory, which is another separate presentation. Can we use encryption in such a way that you can still do analytics on encrypted data? And so if you have a data store, you just leave it encrypted, right? You never have to decrypt. So this is kind of some of the functions inside a data cooperative. Consent management, we are big fans of UMA, user-managed access. MIT was one of the early supporters. I was reminded this morning, it's now 10 years old, and the button, oh my God, 10 years old. What have we achieved? Like, oh, I feel depressed. I don't know. What did we achieve in 10 years, right? So, okay, we achieved version 2 of UMA. Okay, I shouldn't complain. I was the editor for version 1, and even then it was like, okay, this is a lot of work. Algorithms management. So who is the author of the algorithm? Data provenance. Where did this data come from, right? All these issues. So a data cooperative that's member-run needs to have some of these functions, and I believe this is actually a good opportunity for a lot of the vendors and entities in the identity space to look at this, because if you go to credit union, we're in discussion with one in Vermont, they don't have their own IT infrastructure, believe it or not. They actually use a thing called a CUSO, Credit Union Service Organization. Basically, they outsource the entire IT infrastructure to somebody else, and in fact, some credit unions share the same cloud platform as other credit unions. They just have a different sort of landing page in different colors so that the members actually don't get confused. So in this diagram, when an entity from outside is trying to understand, getting insights about members of the cooperative, it asks for the execution of an algorithm. So it's in the Opal model, you would have a menu, algorithm 1 to 50. Algorithm 1 computes this, algorithm 2 computes this, and the default is always return aggregate answers. So you can ask questions like, well, the average Uber driver in Boston, how many miles do they drive a week? Great. But you can't ask, well, Uber driver with plate number XYZ, which places did the driver go to today? That's too much, because that's going to reveal identity, right? So Opal by default prevents that. Okay, I got 9 minutes. Again, this is UMA 2.0 in a very baby fashion. If you guys really want to know UMA, I encourage you to go to YouTube. I think Eve has got a masterclass on YouTube. It's, I don't know, 90 minutes long or something like that, but it's well worth, looking at that. And the idea, what we're using UMA for is not, when you say access to resource, we're not saying copying data. We're saying, give me permission to run an algorithm on your data set. So your data set stays where it is. I'm either somebody from outside, or I'm actually the co-op governance organization. I say to you, okay, I want your consent for me to run algorithm number 25 on your data set. Here's the algorithm. It's published. It's digitally signed, so you can't modify it, right? So that's kind of the idea. And so, so baking this into the UMA flow, you do the usual OR token thing, but instead of saying, give me data, you're saying, well, here's my UMA token. Here's the list of algorithms I want you to run. And if you want to discover more, we have a paper up on arXiv. You just go to arXiv. It's a server run by Cornell University. It's got a ton of papers up there. If you're interested in the work that our group does, I should have explained. At MIT, our group is well known for doing social analytics. It's probably the premier group on the planet that does social analytics. So if you're interested in this, have a look at the social physics book. It was translated into Chinese not last December before, and became a bestseller, like in Chinese. Okay, I was like, who's reading this stuff in Chinese? Translated accurate. So the purple one is on more of this stuff, identity. So we look at identity and data as two spheres, right? This left sphere, right sphere. I've been talking about the data side. Today, most of this discussions about identity is really about identifier management. All the stuff you see today, OAuth, OpenID Connect, UMA, DIDs, they're all identifiers. My credit card is not my identity, it's just an identifier. My public key up on the blockchain is not my identity, it's just an identifier, right? Get rid of it, get another one. That's pretty much how you test whether something is an identity or an identifier. So the trust data book was also translated by the Chinese government, actually without us knowing, actually. And so during one of their visits to MIT, they presented it with two copies. Like here you go, here's your book in Chinese. Like, well, I don't read Chinese. So the context is there. So our group does a lot of work with different governments and different sponsors, usually private corporations. So we have projects going on with the government of Colombia, Mexico, Senegal. These are with different telcos. I think Senegal is with Orange Telecom. Colombia is with Telefonica, I think. We've just finished a project with a municipality government in Israel. That was great. And this is all about Opal. And we're just about to kickstart one with the Beijing central government. So I encourage you to get these two books. The purple one has been expanded and hopefully will be out under MIT Press in about probably by the end of the year. Anything else? I'll just go back. Okay. I'm going to leave 6.2 minutes for questions.
I have to guess that the Chinese government translates social physics into social engineering.
Oh, so you read that article, okay, in New York Times. You guys know what he's talking about? There's a long article in New York Times about what is a social, I don't know what the name's like, okay. It was too depressing, I didn't finish it, okay.
That's less specious points to be made.
Yeah. It's like reading, what's the big fire at Universal Music? You guys read that? They lost a whole bunch of master recordings. I could not finish the article. I was like almost like crying. Okay, like how the hell? Sorry. Questions about data cooperatives. You and you.
When you said you sent an algorithm to the data, how do you know that the data is the real data?
Right. So this is why Tom's discussion earlier was good, because you need a kind of a legal trust framework for entities to get into a network so that an entity that fronts up some data sets is basically saying this is true data set, not fake data set, right? And the algorithm guys will also, is how do you even match, right? So the idea is that one of the requirements of the legal trust framework is to share the data schema. Not the data itself, but just the column headings, the schema. It's a social security number removed, first name, last name. That's how you design the algorithm to do that. And part of matchmaking is perhaps to give a subset for training. So 10,000 rows, PII removed, 100,000 rows, PII removed, so that you can do training of the algorithm. But that's a good question. We get all the time. Sorry, you had a question.
You brought up standard audit. I believe it was an NPR I was listening to. That was basically created a big monopoly. And then the antitrust laws was basically Genesis of that. So I know they are looking at antitrust, leveraging that law
Yeah.
to break up
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's right. That's right. Good, very good point. Yeah, I didn't want to say social media platforms because some of them are sponsors of this event. Okay, you know, at MIT I can say whatever I want, but like here I gotta like be nice to people.
So, first, are you using like homomorphic encryption and doing algorithms on encryption?
So yes, so that's the backend data repository. It's kind of almost a separate problem. Yes, you could do homomorphic encryption. The other thing we're looking at is secure multi-party computation. So SMPC, MPC is an old area in crypto. Data is encrypted in separate pieces. How do you bring them together to do a computation, and then you do a flush of the data, right? And
Just to be fair, there's some more questions.
Okay.
I know that you're sitting on some more, but let's share it around a little bit.
oh, sorry, let me go this side. This light thing is killing me.
Is the idea that the same algorithm or same algorithm could be like similar data sets hosted by different cooperatives? And if so, isn't there a big problem around
Well,
centralization?
so a cooperative could say, we don't want to federate with any other cooperative. It's member driven. It's like condo rules. You guys know what a condo rule is. You got to meet condo meetings. You're going to hate those meetings, right? Hate your neighbor. Same thing, right? Hey, the Uber drivers get together. People who clean hotels, right? This idea of a gig economy. If you clean hotels in the Hilton here, it's the same thing over at Marriott, right? You can, that's the idea. But so could this be the foundation for them to get more value? And this is why trade unions around the world, my understanding is that they're sort of having difficulty in justifying their existence because the nature of work has changed so much in the past like 20 years, 30 years, right? So how can they give back value to the members? And the members are individuals like you and me. We all generate so much data, right? So is there a way to help these organizations? But two co-ops could decide to federate, and the question is, how do you measure the limits so that you don't have PII leakage? And that's always a big challenge.
You want to continue your line of questioning?
Yeah, go. Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
So, what about algorithms on non-encrypted?
Yeah, so the Opal default is algorithms, plain old algorithms in Python even, in R, whatever language you're on plain data.
How do you know the algorithms aren't going to leak data?
Right, so in the co-op, the algorithms,
Can you hear that question?
yeah. How do you know that the algorithms are not going to be leaking data or PII? So in the co-op, the algorithms are run internally only. So it's, so the idea that somebody from outside can say, here's an algorithm, run it, that needs a bit of vetting. So if there's, I don't want to say like marketing company says, oh, I see you're a data co-op with 60,000 members, we want to offer a discount on cars, right? So they might say, oh, please run this algorithm that computes age, income, a whole bunch of algorithms. The data co-op needs to stop this and say, well, hang on a second, let us author the algorithms. Why are you giving us algorithms? So it's supposed to be doing stuff for the benefit of the members, not to monetize data. Because I'm beginning to get concerned about that, monetizing data, because it means selling raw data. And if you sell your data, it's $500, it's a single shot, you've lost it. But if you have it in a co-op, you can reuse it again and again and again for healthcare reason, for discounts. It just, and you get the idea.
14 seconds.
14 seconds. Oh, Tim.
Has there been adoption yet of data from
So we're just testing things out. We have the software. We have an UMA 1.0 implementation. It's probably, we have a data store implementation. The difficulty is actually explaining this. So I've met with different VPs and CEOs of credit unions. to them, this is like mind-blowing, right? So, and I have a feeling this might be easier to deploy in Europe because of GDPR, that the people get it. If you want to know about more about the Opal, so my boss there, the professor, the photo in the second slide, he gave the opening keynote in the EU presidency last year, and he gives you a whole bunch of rules. Share insights, not data, right? So it's just about Opal. But back to your question, it's early days, that's why. So our group at MIT does Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 work, if you guys know what that means, right? This is like 3 years, 5 years out, maybe even longer. So like the encryption stuff, if you're interested, we have a startup called Endor.com. It allows you to do analytics on encrypted data, which is cool. That's definitely Horizon 2 work. It's a startup. And so that's the kind of work that we produce. And so that's the right-hand side. Question is, how do you bulk this into the identity side? So today, people talk about assertions, claims, and so on. How do you get claims? How do you get assertions? It's a data problem. I keep telling the guys, the identity problem is a personal data problem.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
And these tools for identity and for privacy protection, I think they're going to get generalised in the next 5 years as data forms itself into supply chains, and the data economy starts to run on data as crude oil, and these tools are going to get generalised. I think we're in for a really exciting time. Thank you, Thomas. Let's try and finish on time and come back or stay around because we're going to hear about another really exciting privacy-enhancing technology in the form of zero-knowledge proofs coming up in 10 minutes. Thanks again. Thomas, well done. Thank you.